is Thursday, May 4th, 7 p.m. Welcome back. We will continue on with our May 1st annual budget meeting. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Representatives Adams.
Here.
Bailey.
Here.
Baker.
Here.
Burrell.
Here.
Bauer. Burgos. Casper.
Here.
Dean Shinbrot.
Here.
Evans. Frickman.
Here.
Garcia. Gilly.
Here.
Hubbard. No. Kent. Longino. Laughlin.
Here.
Marley. Massett.
Here.
McCabe.
Here.
McDermott.
Here.
Merritt.
Here.
Nault.
Here.
Nugent. Aubry.
Here.
Parker.
Here.
Pasqualini.
Here.
Powers.
Here.
Quinn. Sleeker Hersant.
Here.
Steinford.
Here.
Irma Streeter.
Here.
Jim Streeter.
Here.
Swindell.
Here.
Wagner. Watrous.
Here.
Wells.
Here.
Williams. Wilson. Newsom.
Here.
28 present.
20 members present. I declare a quorum. Representatives Nugent, Wagner, Wilson, Burgos, and Hubbard all said they would not be available tonight. So we're going to take up where we left off on the accounts from Monday's meeting. First one is account 1012, Human Resources. Chairman Nault. That's page 81 in your budget books.
I'd like to move $340,000 or $340,870.
Is there a second?
Second.
Powers.
Motion's been moved for $340,870 for account 1012, Human Resources. Would you like to?
Sure. So just to refresh
Recap.
everybody's memory, we probably were spent more time on this account than any other account in the Finance Committee. If you look at the reason that we did is because there's a request. Part of the increase in this account is funding for a person called a risk manager guy who would be a person that works directly for the Human Resources Director, who goes around and tries to make sure that all the town employees who are driving trucks or whatever are doing things properly from a procedural standpoint, so they're not having accidents and that kind of thing. But the quirky thing about this particular account is that you'll see, if you look in your book, that what the Human Resources Director asked for is a lot lower than what the town manager's asking for. And so that has generated a lot of discussion. You know, I obviously reiterated my concern, which you all know where I stand, that, you know, we need to cut as much as we can, and we probably ought to go with the Human Resources Director's number rather than the town manager's number. So that caused a big to-do. Representative Marley moved 302,884, which I seconded. I believe, although he's not here to defend himself, I believe that the reason he did that is he took he took the salary for that guy. If you look in the book, it's like about 70 something, and cut it in half, figuring that Bob Zagami could go part-time with that position rather than full-time. I think that was the idea on that. And we just argued about it so much that what ended up happening was, when the vote came down, Marley was in favor, 2 were opposed, and I and 2 others abstained because I hadn't made up my mind. And now, after thinking about it a bunch, I'm going to support a lower number because I think we ought to just go with what the Human Resources Director wanted before the town manager weighed in. Obviously, my opinion is obviously he wouldn't have done anything that was imprudent, and we ought to go with his number. That's my opinion. So what I'd like to do is, rather than going with Representative Marley's number, I'd like to move a new number of $316,000. 244, which is a Human Resources Director's requested number.
Is there a second?
Yes.
You got a second, okay.
Yeah.
Motion's been seconded. $316,244 for account 1012. Mr. Zagami, would you like to speak to this?
Sure. Excuse me, I'm sorry for delaying. The other day I was supposed to talk, and I've been out with a virus all week, so I left here early on Monday night. But putting that aside, why do I find this an important position, and why do we have that discrepancy with the numbers? Well, first of all, when I approached Mark for our deliberations, I said, hey, Mark, I didn't say it like that, but I said, Mark, I really need some risk management around here. And we look at the city of Groton, you know, where does their risk lie? It lies with it lies with the Director of Finance, that he has to pick up the pieces. Where does it lie with the Board of Ed? Somewhere in the business office. Where does it lie with my Human Resources Department for the town? I have to catch a bunch of it, and I have to, you know, throw a bunch of it off. It's not just somebody running around watching somebody, how their truck is running and making sure they're driving safe or anything like that. It encompasses everything. If someone slips and falls over here, I want to be over here with a risk management on the spot to make sure we have a perfect investigation, because we want to get the right care for that person who's here, whoever falls, and we also want to be able to have that opportunity to defend ourselves if there's a need to. So there's a lot of prevention. In the Finance Committee, there was a lot of debate with myself and Mr. Marley. He really believed there was nothing you could do to prevent workers' comp, risk management, any of those type things. I got to tell you something, that's not the way it goes. When you look at the cost of our insurance, about $1.2 million that we're going to invest there, and I come and ask for 0.1% to go against that number so that we can start whittling that number down, I think that's not something that's really crazy to ask for. I mean, at some point, we can't keep climbing up with the workers' comp. We've made some strides in it. When I had someone in there for a part-time position, which we laid off 2 years ago, we did start to make some strides. Part-time, it didn't make enough sense to really make that happen. Am I looking for somebody so that I don't have as much work to do, or put the hours, check the parking lot? My car's the first and the last one to leave every night. So it's not like I'm trying to say, I need, you know, to have less work or something like that. No, I need to do more work, and I need to get that type of position so we can start lowering the cost of our insurance, that every year it just keeps going up, you know. And I'm just beating a dead horse maybe, but that's why I'm looking for that. I'm looking to do something with the money, not just take work off my plate.
Mr. Zagami, we taken a look at the workers' comp cases that we had in the past year and determined how many of those could have been avoided if we'd had somebody that was doing risk management?
Well, yeah, I've had some that were cut off quite shortly by, you know, some have amassed as high as, over their career, maybe $1 million in workers' comp. You know, those cases are gone. I've had some of those cases. I've had other cases that were up and over the $100,000 mark on a particular case. That's what's moved my modification number so that I am getting that kind of high rate for the next couple of years. That's what I'm trying to get down. So every year, if I keep working this down, there's also been corrective action issued where people might have had a workers' comp case that they did something that they really avoided being safe, working in a safe way, and that's part of it, is corrective action. There's a lot of different things we can do for prevention and to establish a culture, which really we've never had a culture there as far as that. So is it preventable? A lot of it is. It needs to be a program. If I don't have the manager's number and I have less, I got to do something with this. So what do? Then I hire somebody later in the year. I set up the program as best as I can before I could bring somebody on. You know, whatever it takes, whatever the town needs, whatever the town puts on me, I'm going to do the best I can to make it happen.
So what are some of the things that this risk management person would do?
Well-
On a day-to-day basis?
On a day-to-day basis, I have them do everything from having safety meetings to observing people. Like, if I've had times when I would direct them on a daily basis because they weren't that experienced before, I'd say, okay, go out, show me how many people are driving out there without seatbelts on. And they'd come back and say, geez, your biggest number of people have got your seatbelts buckled behind them. Well, you know, if you're in the private sector and you drive around a truck with your seatbelt behind you, or the DOT catches you, you're terminated. We didn't have that culture. Talking on the cell phone while you're driving one of our units around. I had them actually go around testing tire pressures. When we tested tire pressures, people would say to me, what have you got this person testing tire pressures for? You know? Well, I'll tell you why. Because he came back and he told me 50% of our tires were rated as flat. Now, if you got a truck tire that, you know, loses its ability to stay in life because you keep wearing it down because of, you know, how fast tires go down if they're not aired up. Well, you know, that comes down to a $600 tire here and there, you know, an accident, better fuel mileage, all of those things. My next case would have been, okay, now I want you to randomly check some oil. What's oil got to do with people's safety? Well, not a lot, but guess what? If I find that we have any system that we're not seeing the oil being checked enough, then I'm going to say, hey, I can't afford to blow an engine and, you know, $10,000, $15,000, but now I can see where some of those things are going. We've also seen where people would not have the proper gear on. They'd go into one of these places down below, not have a helmet on, going up and spilling stuff into a thing, didn't have their face shields on. You know, all of these safety things that aren't being monitored, this is where we were stepping in. These are some of the things I was getting going. And without that person getting some of these things, developing a culture with the supervisors, because it's not going to be that person specifically all the time, but as we get into these things. Plus, the field, the people, the employees out there have a lot of issues that they see. Well, let's fix the things before I have somebody get hurt. When they went and inspected buildings, if it was in a maintenance shop and there was an oil spill and it was staying there and not somebody cleaning it right up so we don't have a slip or a fall there, I would call them in the wintertime to make sure that we had plenty of salt thrown everywhere, because I'd be walking across a parking lot saying, hey, anybody that comes here today is going to slip and fall. You know? When we had our workers' comps, they need to be investigated. When we had accidents on the street, we needed to have somebody on the street there to investigate the major accidents and things. And that's what we do.
Does anybody have any questions for Director Zagami? Representative McDermott.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. With my home insurance, if I put an alarm in my house, which I have, I get 5% off my insurance. Is there some way that you can quantify that with, like, workman's compensation? Do they require anything like that, or do they suggest something like that and put a number with it?
No, they really don't. That's not something they've done, but it's something that I know that by putting this program together, that you actually build off it. First, you start to see some of your costs going down. Then you start to get to programs that you would never think that we would be touching, and we start putting those programs in, and this thing just piles on top of each other till we become somebody like that's really concentrating on it. I came out of the trucking industry for 20 years. I came out of the ambulance industry for 19 years. We've been on workers' comp a long time. We've been on all kinds of risk prevention. What we're doing now is not what we weren't, you know, not what we were doing.
How about other towns? What do they do for something like this?
You know, being out of I don't really know in the other towns, to be quite honest with you. It just seems to me that everyone I've talked to, it's kind of like, where can we throw this to? Who's gonna pick up the ball when the attorneys get there and we got to make something happen? You know, that's what it really comes down to. Get the attorney on the phone, let them deal with whatever this accident is to protect us. We can't be on that end anymore.
Okay, thanks.
We now have 30 members. Representative Merritt.
Just curious about the difference between the town manager's number and the department's number.
I'm not sure, Russ. What do you want to know?
You asked for 340,000, and the department's asking for 316. Where's the difference?
Okay, well, if you go to probably the best page to look at in your budget book would be page 84. And right in the middle of the page, or right in the middle of the printed portion of the page is cost centers. And the cost center that we're talking about is the last one, risk management. The 35,973, the vast majority of that is other people's time in the department. As Bob knows, it would be some of his time and some of the other folks' time when they need to go out and check and make sure things are taken care of, or when an accident happens, kind of on a catch-as-catch-can. When Bob and I met to review his budget proposal, we were not only looking at this, but we're looking at insurance, and the thought was, geez, we need to get a better handle on our workers' comp claims and some of the other things that are happening. And so we put in, if you go to page, the difference between the 35,975, which covers portions of other folks' time in the department, to the 73,841. If you go to page 86, you'll see the occupation on third line from the bottom, occupational safety and health coordinator is put in at 37,986. That's a part-time, I believe that's for 9 months, Bob?
Well, that's what it was, because I gotta tell you, I was shy about asking for the money. You know, I know how tight things are and everything, and I know how difficult it is to sell this. But, you know, we're not talking about something that's gonna just be an added expense. This is something that has to bring back money to us. And if it's done properly, I've done it before, it takes time, you know, we set up the right program, it's gonna pay back in spades.
So the salary that's on page 86 is for 9 months, the thought being by the time the budget gets approved, and by the time we do recruitment, it's probably on or about September 1st that we'd be bringing this individual on board. So that's the delta between the number that appeared in the department's request and the number that I'm recommending.
Have we ever had this position before?
Absolutely. We've had this position.
Yeah.
You may remember, well.
Yes.
Yes, so we used to have a full-time,
Yeah.
initially Pam Hayes, who worked in the finance department, and then HR, and then Gary Patterson, I'm sorry. Yep. And Jeff Williams was the gentleman that was doing it part-time, and he left, and is, he left employment.
So this
at
is
the
a
time.
good functional position, and it's something that could be beneficial.
We, for many years of my stay with the town of Groton, going back to the late 70s, have had a full-time coordinator doing this work. It's totally because of budget cuts and reductions that we've gotten away from that. And so, as Bob noted, this is an effort to try to get a better handle on some of our other costs that don't appear in this budget. But we know we need to be doing a better job here. We have 260 full-time employees out there. We have hundreds of part-time and seasonal folks out there. This, in my mind, seems like a very, very wise investment for the amount of potential exposure that we have.
We have 31 members. Representative Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I had a couple of questions for you. First of all, when we did have this safety person before, did the costs go down? were the costs down lower than they are now because of the fact of the things that this safety person does? And then my other question is, from some of the examples you gave, it sounds like we've got some workers out there who aren't paying attention to what safety procedures, like seat belts and regular equipment and stuff. Will this man then, or woman, be someone who would give classes and keep after these people to make sure that they followed the safety procedures?
That's 100% it, is to establish accountability. You're not going to work for me, you don't know me, but you're not going to work for me and have that job that I'm asking for all of the people of the RTM in the town to give me that kind of money to expend it on this type of project and not be accountable. That's not going to happen.
Okay, all right. So this person would take care of some of the problems that you're having now with people not following rules.
And I don't want to make it like we've got some kind of workforce out there that does, but you know something? I've paid, in my history, I've seen so many $7 million deaths and things of people that didn't have seat belts, that rolled over in a truck or whatever, and, you know, and it's the seat belt. To me, if you're not wearing a seat belt, you really shouldn't be working here. We can't afford that.
Yeah.
And I
Okay.
want everybody to go home every night. That's my major case.
Okay, so this would certainly take care of it, and then you're hoping this would lower the insurance that it costs us now.
I can't see how it can't lower the insurance.
Okay, thank you.
So how would the teeth, how would there be any teeth in what this person does with regards to the average person? Did that get reported up to you? Would there be disciplinary actions, warnings?
Yes, and we've actually done that without the person. I've had to, but that's catch as catch can. I'm not catching it all out there, that's for sure.
And how much did we spend in workman's comp last year?
Oh, I bet the thing is around, when we get to that, I think the premium was around $500,000, something like that. It's been going up every year because of the last 3 years, we had claims that were, 2 or 3 years ago, we had two claims. One was over $100,000, and I think another one's over $200,000, two of them. And unfortunately, I think I've told this story before, even to the council, one of the things was not having the proper subrogation. We had an individual be hurt on another property, and our insurance company failed to actually subrogate. When I came on, it was over. And I was trying to make up the time on that and get involved in it, but that horse left the barn, basically. So, I mean, I've also got a meeting coming up with our risk people that we're going to be looking at other insurance companies, because I want to make sure that I've got the best insurance company working for me instead of, just the same old, same old. So I have a lot of things set for this. This is just one piece of the program for risk that I'm working on.
Anybody have any other questions? Representative Wells.
I was just curious, is OSHA an issue in this? Because I worked for a large industrial construction company, and their risk management was pretty much ad hoc. But the Home Office appealed all the OSHA fines because one fine, the second fine, the fines doubled. So they were pretty active in contesting any OSHA fines. And of course, you would really want a risk management to avoid them in the first place. But is OSHA an issue here, or?
OSHA has not been an issue. We've been pretty well keeping that. I've actually had our risk people, I've been able to get free training, OSHA training from them, and that's kept us pretty clean there. And we've had our own internal inspections, and we've also had an outside agency come in and do some OSHA inspections so that we wouldn't fall into that. Because we know once we get on that list, we're never going to make them go away.
Yeah, it got worse. They just said, it was once, and I said, well, why are you appealing this? They said the same thing happens in Kansas that makes 2 times.
Right. If we have one, if there's one complaint that an employee makes, right, wrong, or indifferent, then OSHA has the right to come in, and they're not just going to focus on that complaint at that time. They're going to tear the place apart.
Representative Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Mundy. I'm basically just a little curious. I worked for the phone company. I was a supervisor. I had people with vehicles working for me. It was always the supervisor's responsibility to make sure the safety of the people and to make sure that they were following the rules. And you're talking about training here, and I can understand that, but the training should be done part-time to the supervisors, and it's up to the supervisors to carry out any of the rules that should be seat belts or other infractions, and this is usually done with inspections. I used to go out and check the vehicles, make sure the guys were doing the job, make sure they had the proper safety equipment. As a supervisor, that was my responsibility. It wasn't a risk manager's responsibility. So I'm a little confused by this, as far as, I would think that the supervisor should have more of a hand in this.
Well, that's why we need a culture change. Right now, the supervisors aren't that intent on that. That's not where we are. So they need to be retrained, because they're going to they're to the point where they can walk by a safety issue and not really be focused on it. And that's, well, that's what happens. That's reality. That's it's got to start with risk management. It takes, but where we are today, we need a cultural change. And the only way for the cultural change is to change it with the supervisors, because they're going to be the ones out there. But let's face it, a lot of supervisors don't have that ability to confront people. And you got to have that ability to confront people when you're managing them. You got to be able to tell them when something's not right. Doesn't mean you want to throw them out the door or anything, but it means you got to correct them so that we know. But I mean, if they're saying, geez, okay, well, you didn't feel like going back to get your helmet on or something like that, or hat, whatever it is, I'm not going to bother the guy. He's only taking a second. Now he walks down, bangs his head or her head, and now we got an accident, and he's thinking, well, geez, it was only going to be for a second. Why would I worry about that? Well, that's what happens. So it's cultural. That's what it comes down to.
Representative Kent.
Mr. Moderator, everything that I've heard in this discussion going back and forth sounds like management problems and a lack of supervision and possibly training the management. So maybe we need some tune-up of the management in the town rather than hiring extra people to get involved in the chain of command and maybe not come up with any results. This doesn't sound to me like either confusing it or just a Band-Aid rather than addressing the management problems in the town.
Mr. Director, you care to respond?
I don't know how to respond to that. You call it a Band-Aid solution when we're talking about prevention? And any supervisor...
The first-line supervisor should be focusing on their people.
That's a good operative word, should,
And if they're not, you should be changing the supervision.
Right, so when we look at our supervisors, there's nothing to be corrected. They have accountability in getting the job done every day. They've got accountability in making sure it's safe, providing the citizens with whatever product that they're providing them with. Yeah, we know all that, that's for sure. But are there still...
How does a third-person party come in to check the oil and tire pressure and seat belts? That sounds like first-line supervision.
Well, that's not what we're going to do every day. I was asked for an example. Those were some of the examples that I would do, but there's a lot of other training to do. There's stretching and everything. How do you stretch before you stop working? How do you lift? All of these things. There's a lot of different things. And somebody who's been working at a lot of these things for a lot of years, you do seem to slip on some of these things and not really do what you're supposed to do. So if I see you not lifting properly or something, so I'm going to fire you, or should I retrain you? That's where we can really accomplish something. And if I hadn't done this before, if you're talking to a rookie up here, then I understand what you're saying. Band-Aid solutions, I don't know anything about that. All I know is this is what I really believe we need to do. I've done it before. I'm not trying to save work. I'm not trying to say that our supervisors are bad or anything like this. They need to be retrained. They need to be held accountable. It's something that has to be ongoing.
Representative Steinford.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I also looked at other pages, and accidents, there were 28 were due to actions of the other party. It isn't always the employee. And then liability claims, 2 to date, 2 civil rights case. So I agree with you about the supervisor and whatnot reminding the employees, but things happen that has nothing to do with our employee causing an accident. So that's a factor too.
Is that lady trying to take my job away? You're making a perfect point. We have to defend a lot of things that we didn't do wrong, and that's where risk management comes in. Many of you saw that, where there were a lot of these cases that could be turned around. We defended ourselves with the Commission Against Human Rights. We were 100% right. We won those cases, but geez, I got to tell you something. We spent a lot of money on winning those cases.
Are there any other
you.
questions?
Good point.
Representative Wells.
Just a brief comment. When, we dealt with OSHA on the construction jobs, the question was, who's responsible for safety? And to say the foreman or the supervisors are responsible, they're responsible for production. There's not somebody walking around responsible for safety. They're responsible for keeping people working and getting the job done. And it's a separate job.
Well, that's a good point. They need the extra help. There's no question about it. There's some unsafe jobs out there, and they have to do them. I've witnessed them. I've witnessed when they go down into the ground and they're working with chlorine and these things, didn't clean it up properly, and the next person comes in, passes out, and I've got a workers' comp case there. I mean, there's a lot of things we have to be focused on that, but it's that constant reminding people of how to do things. It's almost like when you say it's a Band-Aid solution or something like that, why do they have batting practice, in ballparks and teams like that? Why, guys already should know what to do batting. Why should they have a batting coach? Why should they have a pitching coach? Why should you have a linebacker coach?
Are there any other questions for the director? Seeing none, we will vote on the figure of $316,244 for account 1012.
Second.
Human Resources.
Oh, I'm a little bit too early. Sorry.
Thanks for the watch team backup, though. All those in favor of the first amended figure, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed?
Raise your hand. Can you read with Mar, Jasper? Yeah, I'd rather you did it. Merritt.
Can everybody hold their hand up?
No,
The nose?
wrong number, sorry.
Newsom, Merritt, Casper, Marr, Lachlan, Watrous, Wells, Gilly, Massett, Swindell, Streeter Irma, Baker.
Any abstentions?
Abstentions? None.
Is that it? Is that right?
The motion passes 19 to 12 to 0.
Can't be right. Can't be right. Can't be right. There's 31 movies there. Oh.
The next account is account 1070 on page 87 of your budget book.
Mr. Moderator, I'd like to move $622,425.
Second.
Motion's been moved and seconded for $622,425 for account 1070, insurance and claims. Again, on page 87 of your big budget book. Would you like to explain your committee's?
Sure. So, if I recall correctly, the town manager basically explained that this number is basically an estimate of what they need to deal with the number of claims that get filed, but they don't know how many claims are going to get filed, so this is kind of their best guess. And in the committee, the vote went down 5 in favor, 0 opposed, and 1 abstaining, Representative Marley. So, anybody wants to elaborate on that?
So this is the town council figure.
Right.
Is there any discussion on this account? No questions. Very good, we'll vote. All those in favor of $622,425 for account 1070, insurance and claims, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Merritt abstains.
Merritt abstains. So that's 30. 1. Okay. 30.
That motion passes 30 to 0 to 1. Next account is account 1071, self-funded plans, on page 91 of your big budget book.
Mr. Moderator, I'd like to move $7,456,157. That is a town council number.
Motion's been moved and seconded for $7
Oh,
million.
I'm sorry, I made a mistake. $7,656,000. I had a little dyslexia there, sorry. Other numbers are the same. 656.
Yeah, it was perfect.
Motion's been moved and seconded for $7,656,157 for account 1071, self-funded plans. Is there any discussion on this account?
So what happened with this at the town council was, if you look, one of the funding items in this account is OPEB, basically retirement benefits, and originally the town manager had requested $940,000 for that. And I believe, if I recall correctly, the town manager volunteered to the town council that it might be an idea to cut that figure in half from $940,000 to $470,000, thereby saving us roughly $500,000, which, you know, is a good thing. And if I say this incorrectly, please correct me, but my understanding is over the years, we've been very good at funding the retirement OPEB benefits, and the ratings agencies who look at our town basically look at our fund balance and that number, and probably a bunch of other things too. And since we've done that over the years, we've kind of built up some good faith with those people, and taking a hit now, probably okay. And so my theory was, of course, if we can cut it in half, why can't we cut it all and cut it down to 0? And the town manager explained that that would probably be a bad idea, because that might be something that the ratings agencies notice. Whereas cutting it in half, not so bad.
Mr. Manager, do you have any response or any comments on?
So I have a question for the town manager, which I did not address at the Finance Committee because I didn't think of it until several days later. Instead of cutting it to 0, what would be your thought if we went from, say, 470 funding for OPEB to 270 and cut a couple $100,000 off more. Would save us almost $250,000, and we're still funding it would be still funding it to the tune of $270,000.
My recommendation would be not to have cut it at all. I think we're pushing it, cutting it in half. You know, when you have a reputation, as Groton has had, of trying to do the right thing, and you kind of fall off the wagon a little bit, that gets noticed as much and maybe more than if somebody's never done the right thing. So I certainly would not recommend that. I've said this to the council, and I think I've said it to the RTM. In some ways, Groton is an overachiever, in my opinion, when it comes to our bond rating. Because some of the things that the bond rating agencies really look for, we don't do a very good job. We don't have a fund balance that compares favorably to our peer communities. And the peer communities are simply communities that have our bond rating. Last time I looked, on average, they had around 11.5% was their fund balance. Ours is 7 3/4. I think it's things like OPEB, and possibly at one point the fleet fund and the computer replacement fund that has impressed upon the bond rating agencies that we're trying, for the most part, on some of these things. We've had some discipline to do the right thing when the going gets tough. I think we can, you know, my sense is we can get away with what was ultimately approved by the council for a year or so. The difficult thing is going to be getting back on track and digging a deeper hole by cutting that amount in half. I certainly would not recommend. I think particularly when we're looking at going out to bond for the school project, this is not the time to be making those types of reductions, in my opinion.
Are there any other questions for the town manager? Seeing none, we'll vote on the amount of $7,656,157 for account 1071 self-funded plans. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No. Abstentions?
One abstention.
Merit. Merit abstains.
28-2-1.
Okay. The motion passes 28 to 2 to 1. Very good. I think that's all for you tonight, Director Zagami. Thank you very much for coming in. Our next accounts are going to be 1090, the City of Groton. The first account being 1090, City of Groton Police on page 213 of your big budget book. So the first account is going to be 10900.
Mr. Moderator, I'd like to move $2,243,802. and that is the town council approved number.
Did you get the second?
Not yet.
Is there a second?
Second.
There we go.
Motion's been moved and seconded for account 10900, City of Groton Police. Would you care to give your committees?
Okay, so my understanding of the town council's rationale, this is a cut of, I don't have the figure written down, but I think it's $200,000 or something to that effect. Or 170? 173. I believe the town council's rationale for this cut was that they were cutting funding for 2 police officer positions. Of course, we only fund half, so that's effectively like 1 police officer position who they would like to hire. Cutting the city OPEB funding for police in half, and there is some kind of funding return to the town council that they factored into that too. At the finance committee meeting, the chief went into great detail with several sheets showing numbers and comparisons between the city and the town police, explaining why that rationale was not correct. Because if I remember correctly, one, the OPEB funding, they were already, unlike us, who were funding pretty much 100%, and then that got cut in half later. They weren't funding their OPEB fully. So when we cut them in half, we were actually cutting them more than that. That was one thing, and then there were some other details on the police officer front, I believe, and then also the return money piece. The city doesn't agree that should have been factored in as a factor. Now, my take on this is that regardless of whether the town council's rationale was exactly correct or not, given the budget crisis that we're in, I was gonna, and I do support the town council's number. And so however, so then the mayor retorted, well, that's fine, but fairness means that if you're gonna cut our budget, we should cut the Groton Town Police budget by a like amount. And my personal opinion is I agree with that in theory. But as a finance committee person, and since we don't do the town police, I have obviously no power over that. And however, I mean, not to preview my discussion on the town police, but I will be looking to cut the town police. I haven't quite figured out by how much yet. So anyways, ultimately, the finance committee did support the town council's number. There was a motion for $2,392,390 made by Representative Gilly, seconded by Representative Powers. I forget the exact rationale for that, but I would assume it was just to basically get the city police back up to where, they were arguing they should get, or at least close to there, or somewhat close to there, that they should get. And, there was some discussion about, the importance of the police and keeping people safe and all that kind of stuff. And so that was voted on, and there were 2 in favor, Representatives Gilly and Powers, 3 opposed, myself, Representative Marley, and Representative Quinn, and so that failed. Then we voted on this number, and the votes were reversed, and it passed 3-2. So that's the Finance Committee story.
Before we turn to the city folks, Mr. Manager, can you please, for everybody, define OPEB?
Other post-employment benefits, it's almost 100% of it is for employee, retiree health costs. Think of it as it's similar in my mind as a pension fund trying to set aside money to pay for anticipated retiree health costs, just like communities set up a retirement fund. For whatever reason, it was never done for health in most communities. There was it's not a requirement. There's a requirement that's been on the books now for a little over 10 years that towns and state governments need to recognize that liability. The requirement isn't so much that you have to set aside funds to pay for those benefits in the future, but there's no doubt that the bond rating agencies are really going to whack you if you don't start to. So the requirement is that you have to recognize that liability, just like you have to recognize a retirement fund liability. And in most instances, that's why towns have retirement trusts to set aside money along with employee contributions and so forth to pay that future liability. So it's relatively new. The Groton started around 2 years before it was required that we acknowledge the liability, which I think served us well, and the city also has a similar program.
Thank you. And folks from the city, can you please introduce yourself for the record?
Good evening. My name is Tom Davern, the police chief for the city of Groton. With me tonight, Ron Uhas, finance director for the city, and Mayor Marion Galbraith from the city.
Anybody have any questions on this account? Representative Masson.
Did I understand you to say that there is a certain amount of money factored into this that you will be expected to give back to the town?
That was part of the town council's rationale. They felt they learned of a surplus from fiscal 16, I believe, and that they felt they took half that surplus back in calculating this number.
Okay, so going forward, what you would be expected to give back is half of any surplus, or is that just gonna happen on a year-to-year basis?
This was the first year that this was brought up, and with the discussion, we were open to sit down and talk about this and if there was a surplus and what would happen. But the other part of that is if we run over budget, we don't come back looking for more funds for a fourth quarter adjustment. So it was something that we said we'd be willing to sit down to talk about, but we want to make sure that if the account goes over budget, that there is some stipulation that we can come back as well.
So,
that works both ways. It's not just a one-way street.
Okay, thank you.
And that agreement was never made. It was said that we would sit down and talk about it.
Okay.
Representative Aubrey.
I'm just wondering if I have my figures right here, so if you'll bear with me. The original number was $4,559,851 for the city. The total? Yeah, I know.
No, we're looking at account 10900.
No, I've got the wrong number. I'm sorry. What was the difference? Okay.
The difference is $173,475.
Okay. And what amount did the council take out of the town police budget? Does anybody know that figure?
Representative Marr.
But I think we gave the town 96.1%. So we took off 3.9%.
From the town.
Oh, no.
Can I have those numbers again, because I couldn't hear her, I'm sorry.
3.9%.
So it looks like we took off, according to the spreadsheet, 3.9% of the town police budget.
And what about the city?
I don't have that number.
Let's see.
I apologize, I should have done my numbers before tonight, but I didn't. So I'm just trying to find out if we got apples and apples, or do we have apples and oranges?
Representative Aubrey, I'd like the chief to speak. He wants to give a little presentation about where the numbers came from.
Okay,
And then we'll see if that answers your question.
all right.
If not, we'll,
Man, oh man, I never think that man, yeah.
All right. You were given a handout at the beginning of this, and I'll refer to that handout with you as I go through this. We come to you tonight because we were told by members of Town Council that all the town departments would receive a 5% cut to their operating budgets, and we believe the city police be treated the same or on parity with the town police in the budget process. In the current budget for the town police, the manager's number of a 0.4% increase to the operating budget was supported by the Town Council and by the Public Safety Subcommittee of the RTM. This number for them reportedly represents about 3 unfilled police positions for the upcoming fiscal year. The operating budget for both the town and the city is defined as that part of the total budget minus fringe benefit costs, or what the town calls non-departmental costs. That being said, we understand the need for budget reductions in difficult economic times. And in fiscal 13, the city did cut its table of organization from 32 officers to 29 officers. Looking at the table on page 1, the request we made to the Town Council represents a cost per city resident of $232 for police services versus the cost for the town police of $410 per town resident. In an effort to manage the $125 million town budget cuts in the short time frame of the budget season, we believe the Town Council made some errors in their calculations. And I'd like to refer you to the first box at the top of page 2. This box presents the city police budget in a similar format to the town police budget. The operating budget is on the first line. The chief's salary and fringe benefit costs is on the second line. The vehicle costs, or our capital budgeting for the most part, is on the third line. And the non-departmental costs are on the remaining from the lines, fourth line on down. Our request to the town this year was for $2.417 million. If you look at the second box on page 2, the Town Council reduced our initial request of $2.417 by $173,000, and the exact numbers are on the handout. The rationale for the reduction, as Representative Nault mentioned, is on the right side of the second box and consists of a $75,000 reduction, or the town's half of the wages of 2 officers, $47,000 or 50% of the city's entire OPEB contribution, as opposed to half of the city's OPEB contribution, and $50,000 representing half of the unspent police budget in fiscal 16. If you look at the third box on page 2, these adjustments represent a 7.18% cut to our requested amount. And that includes a 102% cut to our OPEB request. The fourth box on page 2 shows the town police were treated much more favorably with no cut to their operating budget, a 50% cut to their OPEB budget to just over $2,000 per employee, for a net budget increase of 0.4% for the fiscal year. If you turn to the top of page 3, we talked earlier about the operating budget, and this is a number that came from discussions between the city and town councils concerning the highway department budget. It's defined as the total budget minus non-departmental or fringe benefit costs. The top box on page 3 calculates our new number request on parity with how the town police were treated, takes our original $2.417 million request, reduces our operating budget to 0.4% over last year's amount, or $14,187 reduction, and reduces our OPEB contribution to $2,009 per employee for a $10,700 reduction, or a total reduction of $24,887. This brings our new request on parity with the town police budget reductions to $2.392 million. Thank you for your time, and we'll answer any questions, including explanations of the OPEB and operating expense calculations that you might have.
So Chief, in box number 2, or actually number 3, when you're saying that there's a minus 102% effect on your OPEB budget based on what the town council voted, that was your decision to take that $47,160 out of that account, was it not? The town council actually voted your OPEB number?
The town council, sorry. I believe it was Councilor Perizzotti indicated that she would like to cut our OPEB amount by half because the town had cut its OPEB by half. But what she did instead was cut not just the town's portion by half, but our entire OPEB. So in effect, she cut 102% of what the town would have paid toward OPEB, which meant that we would go to about $1,000 per individual, rather than the $2,000 that the town is paying for its full-time equivalents. Rather than cut the town's portion of OPEB by half, they cut it completely and actually more than their portion.
I guess I'm misunderstanding. I apologize. The account number is 10900. There's 200, you asked for 2,417,277. There was a reduction of 173,475. But the town council, I didn't think they could dictate what was cut within that line item.
That was their rationale for the cut. They said that they wanted to cut the cost, their half of the cost of 2 officers. They wanted to cut our OPEB costs in half, and that they wanted us to use $50,000 from our general fund.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Casper.
Please.
Casper, can you give him your?
Yeah. Just
Thank you.
state your name for the record, sir.
Thanks. Good evening, everybody. Just a couple of points to the city's points.
Can you just introduce yourself?
Yeah,
Mayor?
Bruce Flax, Mayor of the town council. Just a couple of points too. The city has unused $984,000 since 2010 in unused public safety funds. In the year, I think the police chief had just mentioned in 2013 there was a cut to the force. I couldn't hear over there, but there was something that happened in 2013. In 2013, there was $305,000 of unused funds returned to the general fund of the city. There's talk here about the comparison of what the city does with their police and what the town does with our police, and that we should be balanced in that. And I'll just point to last year, where the town police were cut a total of $327,329 from their proposed request. They were cut $156,000 by the town manager, $57,000 by the council, and $113,000 by the RTM. But the city, we didn't do the same to the city that year. It changes. You have to look at the force and what they have and how much money they're spending, and make those changes accordingly. So as far as and then the 50,000, we had talked about in our first meeting with the city that there was $118,690 of unused money returned to the general fund in 2016, and we had to wait. We didn't have to wait. We waited. Ron had done some calculations and figured that $118,590 shouldn't be split in half to $59,000 each. That there was grants that were taken out, and a few other things taken out, and the town percentage was 48.5%. So they brought it down to $50,819. The cut to the city police would only be $122,000. We put the $50,000 on top of it because the city is going to take it from their general fund and give it back and put it in towards the police budget in the upcoming year. So, and I think Ron said that nothing was agreed upon. We had a discussion about it, and you came back with calculations the next time, and you did ask about negative, if you were short on funds, and that, we saw no reason why we wouldn't discuss putting more money in should the money not be spent. You know what I'm saying? Like if
You just asked for the calculation, which we provided to you, but we said that we would discuss it after, because we didn't come up with any agreement at that point.
okay, I mean,
That was our understanding.
Yeah, I think there was we don't need to argue. I just think that the fact of the matter is that the $118,000 of unused money that goes into the city general fund, and that's from the police fund, and we're funding half of it, although not quite half, 48.5%. So to credit that towards next year is reasonable. And as you had mentioned, if you were short money, then we would discuss making you whole on that. Again, since 2010, you've never been short, and you've returned $984,000 to the general fund of the city. 48.5% of that is overall town money that was given to the police, but we've never been credited for. We're very, very thankful that the mayor this year discussed it and said, yes, we can talk about it, and made a calculation, and that's how we credited it. So, yeah, that's it.
Are there any other questions? Representative Pasqualini.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Unless I'm really getting confused by the numbers, this realistically is a $60,000 cut. You can propose that this year I'm going to have $250,000 increase, so I cut you $250,000 when I put you to zero. You start out at zero. Now we cut you $60,000 because you wanted more. Everybody wants more in their budgets. We're trying to hold everybody at zero. So we start at zero. Everything else is an increase. It's not a reduction because you didn't have it. Unless I'm looking at it wrong, anybody can throw it out there. If your budget last year was $10 and you want $12 this year, and we reduce it to $10, we didn't reduce you $2. You didn't have it. We gave you zero, $10. So in essence, by my figures from 2017 to 2018, it's a $60,000 cut from a zero, from not adding any more money. Last year or the year before was a $13,000 cut from zero.
Representative McDermott.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. This is certainly a Byzantine sort of discussion. I wonder if the viewers at home are aware of just how large our police budgets are. We're talking about $10 million for our town police budget, which includes benefits, which is not part of the operations budget, which we ordinarily see here, and about $4.5 million for the city. You add those together, you got $14.5 million. I've gone through every single town in the state of Connecticut. There is nobody, given our demographics, statistics with regard to crime, household incomes, there's nobody that has anything that's comparable to what we have here. I'd like to change the discussion a little bit, and let's talk about that 2013 study that we did that nobody seems to want to discuss, but indicates that the town of Groton could take over the city's policing with 16 people. Now, whether you believe that or not, that was a number that came out from an independent research organization. And I've seen the report and read it a few times, showed it to other people. It's definitely something that could be discussed and done. Now, there are some things that can back that number up. That would be half of what the city has now. And you have to take into account the small area that the city takes care of, 3 square miles, 3 other police departments that cover the industrial complex down there. I don't know how you can ignore those kinds of things. The crime rate down there has been constant for a long time. The property crime rate is down 40% from what it was.
Mr. Moderator, I am rising to a point of order.
The representative will state their point of order.
No disrespect. This is a discussion about the city police budget, not about the police study. That's a discussion that can be had at another time.
Representative Massey, I concur with you. I took what Representative McDermott said, and I thought about that. We're not having discussions on merging town and city resources. I took it as he was looking at the study and saying that town police felt that, or the study said rather, that the same amount of area could be covered by 16 officers, right? That was the point you were making, not...
That's right.
We're not talking about merging the town and the city.
Absolutely not.
You're just saying the study said
it
that was what
consolid-
indicated that's what the study says.
Absolutely, just talking about the specific example using the city. If that
Thank you,
number is
Representative
correct,
Massett.
if that number is correct, then, and consolidation is something that's never going to happen here anyway, probably. I think it's a number that has to be looked at, that the city has to look at eventually to bring it down to that point. There are, if you take a couple of towns that are close to the numbers in crime in Connecticut, there's just no analog that comes close to what the city has. Putnam, for instance, has the same crime rate. They have 15 officers, and they cover 20 square miles. I just think these things need to be brought out.
Putnam
Could not
covers
support a
1
number
square
any
mile,
bigger than
sir.
the one that's on the board now.
Putnam covers 1 square mile, sir. Putnam is 1 square mile.
Well, according to the FBI statistics I looked at, it's 20.
The town of Putnam is 20, and that's covered
the
by the
area
state
that they
police.
cover.
The city of Putnam is 1 square mile.
Is there any other discussion on this account 10900 for $2,243,802? Representative Kent.
Mr. Moderator, I'd like to make an observation. Up until 5 years ago, I lived in Bridgewater, New Jersey, which had a population of 42,000 versus our 39, and it was within a mile or two of the same square miles as Groton. It had a police force of 75 officers. Here we have a budgeted amount of 116, which is 54% more than what Bridgewater, New Jersey did. Bridgewater is crisscrossed with major highways, shopping centers, had industrial complexes, Johnson & Johnson, a lot of business, regional high schools. The town of Groton Police Department could cover the whole town, and you could eliminate the city police department based on those numbers. So I think there's a lot of room for improvement in cost efficiency.
Any other discussion? And I would remind everybody, Representative Bauer.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. This kind of a cut would cause what kind of damage to the police department in the city and to any other facilities that are being supported by this?
Well, the cut represents one full-time equivalent position, and it'll also affect purchases of vehicles. We didn't purchase a vehicle last year, so it'll be a vehicle that we won't purchase this year at the least. I haven't examined it fully, but the town's half of 2 police officers is 1 full-time equivalent.
Would anything else be affected? Not roads or what? Would roads be affected at all, ma'am?
Well, it would be staffing levels, ma'am. It would be affected by personnel cuts.
Representative Bauer, are you talking about the highway maintenance?
Okay, thank you very
That's
much.
A separate account. Representative Marr? Can you please speak in the microphone?
If we're cutting the city police budget to this number, I just hope we're cutting the town to the same amount, especially with the dire financial crisis that we are facing. So if we're cutting this, let's just cut them all the same, to be fair.
And I would remind the body that the public safety budget is just the police operations budget, the town police. I think we've already voted tonight on benefits and insurance, whereas the city's number is includes all of those. Is there any other discussion? Representative O'Bray.
Each area has its unique entities, but I think we have to remember that in the city, we have a density population that is not experienced in the town. And I think it makes the job much more difficult. We have some areas that, because of the good work of our police department, I want to say in my city, I'm not in the city anymore, but it is a problem area, and they've been able to do an excellent job with that. As far as the police department, or whatever you might call it at AB, I'm sure it's a very cooperative spirit, but I know that their interest is the inside of EB and not the outside of EB. And so I think those things have to be taken into consideration. And I think that, I think all of us, or at least myself, I'm learning that I need during the year to be looking more at things than at the one time that we sit down and look at it. Some of the people come in quite often and talk to us now, and we feel much better about their budgets as they do that. But I'm going to ask that the full amount be given to the city, and that during the coming year, we look at things and see where we really should be making decisions, because I don't think we're well informed at this point. This information tonight was very helpful, but it is tonight. And I'm not a mathematician, and I can follow you, but to a point. But I would just ask that we stay with the amount that was originally allocated, and I think that was $2,417,276.
I'll second it.
Thank you.
Streeter.
Motion's been moved and seconded for $2,417,277 for account 10900. This represents an increase over the town council's voted number, so it requires a 2/3 majority.
Which is 21 people.
How many?
21.
Which is 21 people. Before we vote, is there any other discussion? Is there any discussion on the first amended figure? Yes, sir.
Can we just, I mean, this is obviously completely up to the RTM, but can we make a recommendation to go with our adjusted number to keep it in parity, which was the $2,392,390? Just to keep it in parity with where the town police is and the non-departmentals, but that's just our
What was the number?
It's right here.
$2,392,390.
Yeah, I'll withdraw that number for $2,417,277. I'd like to make a motion.
Representative Power, you cannot withdraw your motion.
We can take another number.
There can be a third number on the floor, Representative Power, if you'd like to put another number up.
Wait a minute, hold on. I'll withdraw my motion, then he can do his, right? Or do we want to go 3 on the floor? Okay, 3 on the floor.
Okay, put 3 on the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'd like to,
What is your number, Representative Powers?
my number is $2,392,390. $392,390, please.
Second.
Motion's been moved and seconded for $2,392,390. Again, that is an increase over the town council's number, so it's going to require a 2/3 vote. Is there any discussion on the second amended figure that's been moved and seconded? Representative Pasqualini.
Nobody said that I was wrong with a $60,000 decrease, but now we're going to bring it up almost $250,000
when we have to come up with 5 million, and that's a guess. It's really 14 million. I don't know, I'm just trying to figure out where everybody's at, or where you're gonna do it. Groton City, Public Works, and the town police are the 3 next largest budgets other than Board of Ed. So figure out where 5 million are coming from. Could you just give them back another 250?
Any other discussion on the second amended figure? Seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote on the second amended figure of $2,392,390 for account 10900, City of Groton Police.
Okay, when I call your name, please say yes, no, or abstain.
Insane.
Adams?
No.
Bailey?
No.
Baker?
No.
Burrell?
No.
Bauer?
No.
Casper?
No.
Dean Shinbot? Evans?
No.
Frickman?
No.
Gilly?
No.
Kent?
No.
Let's see. Laughlin?
No.
Marr? Massett?
Yes.
McCabe? McDermott?
No.
Merritt?
No.
Nault?
No.
Aubrey?
Yes.
Parker? Pasqualini? Powers?
Yes.
Quinn?
No.
Sleeker Hussant?
No.
Steinford?
No.
Irma Streeter?
Yes.
Jim Streeter?
Yes.
Swindell?
No.
Wagner? Wautris?
No.
Wells?
Yes.
Newsom?
No.
That's it. 7 yes, 28 no. No abstentions. Why?
No abstentions.
24. 7 yes, 24 no. How did I get 28?
Second amended figure fails, 724 to 0. Is there any discussion on the first amended figure of $2,417,277 for account 10900? Representative Streeter.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'd like to move another figure, $2,300,000.
Is there a second?
Second.
The rationale, that's a compromise figure from the initial 2,243 and the 2,417 figures.
Is there any other discussion on the second amended figure? Seeing none, we'll do another roll call vote on $2,300,000 for account 10900.
Adams?
No.
Baker?
Yes.
Burrell?
Yes.
Bauer?
No.
Casper?
No.
Dean Shinbot?
No.
Evans?
No.
Frickman?
No.
Gilly?
No.
Kent?
No.
Laughlin?
No.
Marr?
Yes.
Massett?
Yes.
McCabe?
Yes.
McDermott?
No.
Merritt?
Yes.
Nault?
No.
Aubrey?
Yes.
Parker?
Yes.
Pasqualini?
No.
Powers?
Yes.
Quinn?
No.
Sleeker Hussant? Steinford?
No.
Irma Streeter?
Yes.
Jim Streeter?
Yes.
Swindell?
No.
Watrous? No. Wells?
Yes.
Newsom?
No. Excuse me, Mr. Moderator. I was skipped.
Sorry.
That's
Oh,
okay.
I'm sorry.
It happens.
How's that happen? Oh, okay.
I'm not the only one that
Bailey?
made a mistake tonight. Hey?
Bailey?
Bailey?
No.
Thank you, sir.
So that's 12 in favor, 19 opposed.
The motion fails 12-19-0. Is there any other discussion on the first amended figure, $2,417,277? Representative Bauer. Can you please use the microphone, Representative Bowers?
I'd like to put a new number on the floor, $2,650,000 and $300.
Sorry, again. One more time.
Say the whole thing.
Yeah.
2, 6.
$3,656,000 and 530. 534.
34?
Thank you.
Representative Bauer, can you please tell us what your rationale is for that number?
656.
Representative Bowers? What your rationale is for the new number?
The closer we can come to what they need, what the city needs in order to continue with its programs for the police, and they have done a great job in the city. And I'd hate to see more and less police protection. I live in the city. I do have an ulterior motive. Thank you.
She doesn't have a second yet? No second?
Is there a second?
No second.
Hearing no second,
A point of order, Mr. Moderator.
Representative, please rise and state your point of order.
You cannot go above the town manager's figure, and that is above the town manager's figure.
That's a very good point. It's a very good thing we have a lot of smart people out here in the RTM, but, so no. So Representative Bauer, your motion is out of order. Is there any additional discussion on the First Amendment figure of $2,417,277? Do a roll call vote?
Yeah.
Seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote.
Adams? No. Bailey?
No.
Baker?
No.
Burrell?
No.
Bauer?
Yes.
Casper?
Yes.
Dean Shinbrett?
No.
Evans?
No.
Frickman?
No.
Gilly?
No.
Kent?
No.
Laughlin?
No.
Marr? Massett?
No.
McCabe? McDermott? Merritt?
Yes.
Nault?
No.
Ilbrey?
Yes.
Parker?
Yes.
Pasqualini?
No.
Powers?
Yes.
Quinn?
No.
Sleeker Hassant?
No.
Steinford?
No.
Irma Streeter?
Yes.
Jim Streeter?
Yes.
Swindell?
No.
Watrous? Wells?
Yes.
And Newsom?
No.
Just got me confused, because what are you going to vote on now? It's 9 in favor, 22 opposed, but now I don't have any number. 9 in favor, 22 opposed.
Motion fails 9 to 22.
Okay.
We're down to town council number of $2,242,802 for account 10900. City of Groton, please. Is there any further discussion on this number before we vote?
I can.
Seeing none, we'll have a roll call vote.
Adams? Bailey?
Yes.
Baker? Burrell? Bauer?
No.
Burgos? Oops. Casper?
Yes.
Dean Shinbrot?
Yes.
Evans?
Yes.
Frickman?
Yes.
Gilly?
Yes.
Kent?
Yes.
Laughlin?
Yes.
Marr?
No.
Massett?
Yes.
McCabe?
Yes.
McDermott?
Yes.
Merritt?
No.
Nault?
Yes.
Aubrey?
No.
Parker? Pasqualini?
Yes.
Powers?
No.
Quinn?
Yes.
Sleeker Hussant?
Yes.
Steinford?
Yes.
Streeter Irma?
No?
James Streeter?
No.
Swindell?
Yes.
Watrous?
Yes.
Wells?
No.
And Newsom?
Yes.
Yeah, I think this is right. 22. 13, no. 21 plus 13. Clear. 21 plus 13. No. 21 and 10.
Motion passes 21, 10, 0.
Pardon? Yes, please.
I think this would be a good time to take a 10-minute break. Representative Massett.
Mr. Moderator, would it be possible for someone from the Public Safety Committee, from the Town Council, someone from our Public Safety Committee, someone from the Public Safety Committee in the city, at some future date, to get together and seriously start to discuss the police study so that we are not having or trying to have that kind of conversation during budget time.
A consolidation discussion? Is that what you're talking about? Or you're just talking about the numbers, right? We'll take your recommendation. Write that down. This would be a good time to take a 10-minute break. So we're in recess for 10 minutes. Next account is account 10901, highway maintenance.
Mr. Moderator, I'd like to move $1,963,250.
Adams.
Motion's been moved and seconded for $1,963,250 for account 10901, highway maintenance.
And
Rationale?
when we discussed this, the city mayor explained how they had reached that number by agreement with the town council. And when we were discussing the Groton Long Point highway budget, the town manager explained that we can't change that number by rule. I believe that same rule applies to this. So anyway.
Mr. Mayor, do you want to add anything to that, or?
Sorry. One of my least favorite things every year is to explain to the RTM that the RTM doesn't have the ability to change the highway dollar amounts for either the city or Groton Long Point, but you need to approve the number. There's two different things working here. Both the city and Groton Long Point are special act communities. There's a procedure laid out in which it's between the city and the town council to come up with a number that hopefully is agreeable. If it's not agreeable, it may end up in arbitration, as it has in the last couple of years, or over the last couple of years. And then in the charter, in the town charter, there's a provision that states the RTM needs to approve all expenditures. So on the one hand, while you don't have the ability to change this number, you do have an obligation under the charter to approve all expenditures of the town.
Thank you. Motion's been moved and seconded for account 10901. Is there any further discussion? Representative Massett.
Just a quick question. For the past few years, we have gone into arbitration, and somehow somebody figures out an award. Is there any way that the mathematical formula can be figured out so that we don't have to do this every year? Because it's costing money. And there has to be a formula that they use.
So if I may, we prevailed in the 2016 budget. In the I get lost in the years. In the 2017, as part of the decision from the arbitrators in the 2016, it was recommended that we have a study done of the financial and operational analysis between the two departments. So we are going to undertake that, and then out of that, perhaps we'll have something that will settle 2017, or perhaps we'll have what the arbitrator wanted us to have if we came before her again. For this year, we met with the three councilors, the three city councilors, the three town councilors. This number was decided on a provision. We understood, and we asked 3 times at that meeting just to make sure it was right, that the town manager's number was going to be cut by 5% for every department. So we said, well, then that's fair to do to us too. However, that turned out not to be what they did to the other departments. So we agreed to something on a provision that was not sustained later. So.
Are there any other questions before we vote? Seeing none, we'll vote on $1,963,250 for account 10901. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously.
Why?
The next account, 10.
What was, you said unanimously, what
I'm
was the
sorry.
totals?
31-0.
3100. 31 to 0 to 0. Next account on the floor is 10904, street lighting, page 13 of your budget book.
Mr. Moderator, I'd like to move $113,568.
Second.
Motion's been moved and seconded for $113,568 for account 10904. You want to give the rationale for your committee?
Actually, there was no discussion in the Finance Committee, and it passed unanimously.
Because it's another number that we have to pass.
We don't
No?
have to, but it's just a math formula. Number of lights times hours times whatever the electricity rate is.
Go ahead.
So this is, this is to pay for street lighting within the city of Groton. We get an estimate from Groton Utilities every year, and this is the estimate that we received from them this year. It's not related to the highway, but it's not the provisions that the highway budget falls under. From a practical standpoint, if you want to have lights in the city, we need to have the money. There was some discussion at the town council meeting about the status of or is there an initiative that the city's looking at to possibly convert their street lighting to LED? That is something that we've had a number of discussions with them on over the last year or so, and it is my understanding that Groton Utilities is looking at that. The thought being that if that happens, at least the amount of electricity used every year should be significantly less than the current lights. How the new street lights get paid for, we don't know at this point. And so there may be some other costs to convert them, similarly to what we've just recently completed on the eastern side of town, in the CLNP, or the former CLNP franchise area, Eversource area. The town has just completed a street lighting project that we're just finishing up some of the town parking lots this week, in fact. But we're seeing a significant reduction in electrical costs, though we're not seeing any budget reductions at this point, because the way we're paying for the new lamps is through, instead of paying for electricity, we're paying the capital costs over the next 3-4 years. So we actually, from a budgetary standpoint, won't see any reduction in those items for another 3.5-4 years or so. So this is the estimate that we got from Groton Utilities to be able to power up the lighting within the boundaries of the city of Groton.
Is there any other discussion on this account before we vote? Seeing none, all those in favor of $113,568 for account 10904, street lighting, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 31-0-0. Next account is account 1011, information technology, on page 69 of your big budget book.
Mr. Moderator, I'd like to move $997,716. $997, I'm sorry, I might have misspoken. $997, $716.
Motion's been moved and seconded for $997,716 for account 1011. Rationale from the committee?
Yes, if you look in your budget book, you'll see that in this account, the IT department wants to hire a new office technician. In the Finance Committee, I can express my concern that hiring a full-time employee was not feasible given the budget situation this year. Town IT director indicated that he really needed the office technician position, as not having it filled made it very difficult this year to take care of all the issues that come up during the year. And Representative Marley moved a new number, which is funding the new office technician position at half funding to allow the hiring of a part-time employee. And then that vote, after some discussion, was unanimously in favor. And, you know, for me, that made sense because this kind of person is kind of like he fixes problems as they come up. So it's not like, you know, he's on an assembly line making widgets. So having a part-time employee is more feasible in my mind than somebody who has like a constant churning task they have to do. This, he comes in, he fixes whatever is broken, he goes home. You know, maybe you can do with a 20-hour-a-week person rather than a 40-hour-a-week person. That was my thought.
Director Hancock, please introduce yourself.
Brian Hancock, Manager of IT.
Is there any discussion on this number? Seeing none, we'll vote. All those in favor of $997,716 for... I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Representative Merritt. Did not see your hand.
Put your hand up.
My thoughts on the office technician to fully fund that position, was cut last year by the RTM, and I was looking to fully fund that position to do a lot of the project coordination. Some projects coming up. I'd be a project manager. They would assist me on making meetings, setting up support, getting people into meetings. It would also do with the agenda management that we're looking to bring in-house here now. Looking for this person to coordinate most of the training, get people into the training rooms, have them set up. Basically, I do that now, so that's what I do, is I run around and do that stuff. PC support, it would do some clerical work for me, some of my purchasing, some of my contracts, put my spreadsheets together, which, like I said, I do right now. Inventory databases, help desk support for PCs, my monthly status reports. That's what this position I was looking for. I mean, I'll take anything at this point, but that was my reasoning for a full-time position in this spot. It would assist me, yes, it would.
Is there any other discussion on this number? Representative Kent.
The Board of Ed has quite a IT organization. Are there any synergies that are possible between the town and the Board of Ed in terms of people and resources, particularly maybe in the summer and things like that?
Well, we actually had a meeting with some councilors, some RTM members, and the BOE and myself to talk about them synergies. And my counterpart at the BOE, and I do agree with them, is it's tough to bring people back and forth with two separate, completely different networks. That it's really tough to do. We do have a CIP coming up a little bit later on for the Client First Initiative, which is one of the first steps in getting the town and the BOE's financials together. So we are looking to, I'm not going to use the word consolidate, to get our, start working with the BOE and getting our stuff together.
Any other discussion on this number? Seeing none, we'll vote on $997,716 for account 1011. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
That's clean.
Abstentions?
31-0.
Motion passes 30-1 to 0. Next account is account 6050, technology replacement. Page 76 of your budget book.
Mr. Moderator, I'd like to move $84,868.
Is there a second? Second. Motion's been moved and seconded for $84,868 for account 6050, technology replacement. Was the committee's rationale, please?
Well, when we discussed this account, there was a discussion about what computers and monitors are going to be replaced, and we went through that with the manager of IT. There was some last year, you may recall this, I think the request is roughly in the area of $150,000, and between the town council and us, we cut it, I think, down to somewhere around this number, or maybe a little bit lower. And so for me personally, you know, I would have been happy to cut it some, but I wasn't all that. I mean, if somebody wants to move a number, I couldn't tell from the plan a good number to cut more. So we went down, we voted, and there were 5 in favor, 1 opposed, Representative Marley, and so it was approved by the committee.
Director Hancock, do you have any discussion? Anything you want to add on this account?
Yeah, this is, this computer replacement fund is just the expenditure side. This is giving me the authorization to buy the equipment for the town. We're looking at 56 computers and 2 laptops. You do see it scheduled for 50 monitors on here. I've adjusted my thinking on that. Up right now to date, we've probably had 45 monitors go south on us as we sit right now. So I took a rough number of 50 monitors that I would keep 4 or 5 on hand, buy as needed, and replace as they break. Currently, we're using the BOE surplus monitors. They have worked out for us. They're all scratched up, and majority of them are not working. So, and that's pretty much where we stand right now. Just looking to get some decent equipment out there for our users.
Is there any other discussions on this account? Seeing none, we'll vote. All those in favor of $84,868 for account 6050, technology replacement, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 31-0-0. Next account. What's that? It's not the ampersand, is that, I think that's 7B. 7B, computer technology acquisition.
Mr. Moderator, I move 0.
Second.
Motion's been moved and seconded for the amount of 0 for CIP 7B. I'm sorry, my apologies, Representative Nault.
Yeah, I
First, give the
wouldn't normally
committee, what's the
insist,
committee
but
rationale?
There's a little bit of a tortured history with this with the Finance Committee. So we originally met on the 17th of April, or April. And, you know, I of course you know where I stand on the budget. I'm looking at 1.189 million as a figure, and I'm thinking, you know, that's part of the way towards our Pasqualini 5 million or 14 million Malloy cut or whatever it turns out to be. So I was interested in cutting this big time, and so we got to a discussion with the assistant to the town manager, and she explained that she had had a very recent preliminary discussion with the consultant that's kind of helping us with this project, and they indicated that this is, if you look at your book, you'll see that this is actually like a 4 or 5 year plan for like $5 million total, or roughly somewhere around there. And so it's a phased approach. They don't do the whole thing in 1 year, and that they could kind of stretch that a little bit by doing the phasing a little bit different, and that would cost roughly $600,000. So we were thinking, I think some on the finance committee were thinking about moving that number, and then I remembered that my wife had said that the town council was going to revisit this, and so the town finance director was there, and she said, yes, tomorrow night they're going to revisit it, and so Representative Marley moved to table the account until April 20th, which was our last meeting, so that we could see what the town council did. So fast forward to April 20th, we met again, and the motion on the floor then at the Finance Committee was $658,000, which was seconded. And the assistant to the town manager explained that she had just, right before the town council meeting that day, had met again with the consultant, and they had kind of tweaked their numbers a little bit from 600 to 658 as a better number for this new phased approach. And in fact, that's what the town council voted, was $658,000. I reiterated my concern with this year's budget situation, and so I moved 0, seconded by Representative Marley. Representative Powers and Gilly stated that they couldn't support the number, and they thought that we should support the town council's number. And so the vote went down 3 in favor, myself, Representative Marley, Representative Quinn, 2 opposed, Representative Powers, and Representative Gilly. For me personally, obviously this is a good thing to do, because the IT project is a good thing to do because a lot of our software is like old as the hills. And, but my thought, in addition to the fact that, you know, if it's a phased thing, obviously we can start the phasing a little bit later, like July 1st next year. But also, you know, we have a new town manager coming in, and I didn't discuss this when we were discussing the executive management budget, but one of the things that I thought in that budget was they're funding the new town manager's position at only $6,000 less than the current town manager, who has like 20 years of experience. So I expressed some concern about that and said, hey, why is the new town manager getting almost as much as the current town manager? And the answer was that the new town manager that we're gonna get is probably gonna be a really experienced guy who's already been doing town manager stuff for 20 years. So my thought on this is, listen, if we're gonna get some guy from Middletown or New Britain or who knows where we get him from, who's been doing this for 20 years, maybe he has some experience with IT upgrades, maybe even recent experience, and maybe he could look at what we're doing and say, that's really stupid, or no, that's a good idea, let's do that next year, and he might push real hard next year, but let's give the new town manager a chance to look at this project and hold off for another year reluctantly. So that was my thought.
Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure.
For the record.
Good evening, I'm Nikki Brezian, the assistant to the town manager. And I did prepare a handout to give you some background on this project. If anyone did not pick it up from the table, Cindy Landry would be more than happy to bring you a copy. I'll be addressing this handout. I'm not going to go over the whole thing, but there are some key points that I would like you to know about this project. Primarily, as Representative Nault mentioned, our existing software systems that run some of our major things like our financials are coming to end of life as we know them. A year ago, the estimate to upgrade those software suites, specifically Penimation, Kronos, and Hansen, was $1.2 million. And that was just to get us 3 standalone pieces of software. The purpose of this project is actually to move us into the next, a more efficient phase where our major software is actually integrated. It would integrate our financial modules, our land management modules, our work order and asset management, and also our people management, our human resources. Those are the 4 modules that are proposed under the original 1.189 million project. In discussions with the consultant, we talked about a way that we could salvage the project as a whole with our vendors, because there are cost efficiencies associated with doing this as an entire project. If we were to purchase these modules individually, we would be paying much higher costs. And so we talked to our consultant about doing contract scheduling, which is this concept. I wouldn't really call it phasing, but it's more the first portion of the contract would cover our most critical and our most vulnerable software, which right now is our financial software, some of our human resources software, and our time and attendance. So this first phase, this $658,000 would cover those most critical issues. Just to address how we got from 600 to 658,000, the 600 was an off the top of their head estimate by the consultant. When we were faced with the idea of breaking this into pieces, we needed to build in hardware costs that perhaps could have been covered by the larger number. But without the larger number, we needed to plan for the hardware costs. So that's how we got the extra $58,000 into that estimate. The project has been, since last year when the funding was cut, we have worked very hard as an organization for a year. We've invested hundreds of hours across the organization preparing for this project. As you can see from what I've laid out for what we've been doing over the last year, it's all been leading up to vendor demonstrations that are right now scheduled for May 23rd through the 26th. We're only going to do those demonstrations if we have funding in place to actually hire a vendor. I would then skip to the end where we talk about the impact of not funding the project. That certainly was a question that we faced not only from the town council but from the finance committee. And I don't say this lightly, but if we do not fund this project, the momentum and the staff buy-in that we've been working so hard on over the last 2 years will be lost. We are, at this point, losing functionality in our software. If any of you access, for example, GIS on our website, you'll know that we're starting to have difficulties there. Brian can talk more about the technical issues. But we are also experiencing that internally with some of our financial software, et cetera. So we're losing functionality not only because of our software, but we are also losing employees who have the institutional knowledge to do the workarounds or to come up with other options. The RFP process, which we have been going through for the last year, leading up to the process, putting out the RFP last October, November, leading up to the vendor demonstrations coming up in a couple of weeks. Very time-consuming, very costly. When we put out the RFP, we only had 2 qualified responses. What we are looking for is such a comprehensive product that there are just not that many vendors out there, nor are there many vendors who are actually willing to come into Connecticut to provide this type of software. Holding off is not going to give us any better selection of vendors. I'm confident, our consultant Client First is confident that we've got the 2 best vendors who have issued or who have responded to our RFP. Along with that, having a new town manager come in, it's not like a new town manager is going to know, oh, there's a vendor you guys didn't think of. We have the 2 best vendors that could possibly meet our needs. The new town manager will be involved in the project. He's not coming in too late. He or she is not coming in too late. So they will be involved in the project. They will have a say in the project. We're not going around the new town manager. My fear, again, is if we hold off, these two vendors who have invested their time, their money in getting us to the point of doing a demonstration, if we have to ask them a year from now to go through it all again, I truly do not know how they will respond. And my fear is that we may not get as good a response even as we got this time with the two vendors.
So the vendor demonstrations, what does that entail?
The initial demonstration is 4 days of going through with everybody in the organization an overall view of the software, and then breaking out into the individual modules to test different scenarios, to allow the organization to ask questions about what can the software do, how would you handle this.
When you say the organization, who specifically would you be, throughout the town, who would you be bringing in to try out this software to make sure it meets the needs of all the individual departments?
There are about 20 modules. So for each given module, we've actually gone through and identified who the teams are, who our reviewers are. So I'm trying to pick an example. So for general ledger in finance, it would be Cindy Landry. It would be whoever our new, hopefully, accounting treasurer manager is. It's going to be some of our people from our accounting division. Time and attendance will be people from our HR department and people from finance. The modules pull from different areas of the organization.
Thank you. Representative Pascaline.
Nikki or Brian, maybe you can answer that. And looking at the lifespan of software, I think there was a study, and I think it was in 2013, if I remember right in reading. There's only a 6 to 8 year lifespan, and we're talking a 5-year project. Are we in essence going to reach that 5-year and really have 1 year left on this software, or is the contracts written to where we're going to get upgrades or whatever? It's a big investment, and doing it all at once, which means it's all going to become obsolete all at once versus in sections or at different times.
Go ahead, you start.
Well, we currently have, our financial software is 20 years old. I think it turned 20 years old this year. And they've done updates, and we've done some upgrades over the course of the years. They haven't really kept up. The software is being discontinued. They're kind of dropping that line. They're going to their one solution. And the software that we're looking at, it is written in the contract for upgrades, so it wouldn't come obsolete in 5 years. We're probably looking 15 years, hopefully longer, if the vendor can keep current with their software, which we normally push them to do.
The only thing I would add to that is that one of the things we've been doing as an organization over the last year is putting into place best practices for software selection, and that means that we've learned a lot about what questions to ask, how to research a company to find out where they are in their software releases, what companies have they bought, what companies have they taken over, what products are for them are coming to the end of life where they're not going to be supporting them. I'm not sure that we knew how to ask those questions before, so that's part of our due diligence now when we choose a vendor for software.
Representative McCabe?
You mentioned that...
No, not Representative Kent, Representative McCabe, sorry.
Hi, I just wanted to make a point in reading your comments about momentum and staff buy-in and also losing that tribal knowledge. I agree 100%. I just went through a 4-year ERP replacement project at Electric Boat, and those concepts are absolutely 100% true. And I don't know if it's the right time, but I would like to put another number on the board for
Absolutely.
the 600,058.
650,000?
Yes, sorry.
Is that Streeter? Who seconded?
Who seconded?
Yeah, Irma Streeter.
Motion's been moved and seconded for $658,000 for CIP 7B. This is the council's number. Is there any further discussion on this? Representative McDermott.
Hi, Nikki. I've been through some of these IT upgrades in my previous corporate life, namely Ross Perot's EDS out of Dallas, and it can be a nightmare unless this thing has some guarantees associated with it. Do we have anything like that that we can make sure that these vendors can provide for us if things go awry? Or is this all on our shoulders?
I'm not sure I know what you mean by guarantees, but the best practices that I was referring to means talking to them about everything involved with training, implementation, maintenance going forward. And again, we have Client First advising us. They've been invaluable in teaching us this process, helping us know what questions to ask. So no, I feel confident that, you know, the vendor we choose will be there, will know what our needs are. Almost as importantly, we'll know what they are not able to do. A lot of times people go into software implementation thinking, you know, it can do everything and are disappointed to find out it isn't, or that it can't. And we'll be going into it with our eyes wide open, knowing what its limitations are as well as what it can do for us.
Why are there such a limited number of vendors for, you know, a town of our size? I would think there'd be plenty of people to look at and choose from. What's going on there?
I think the best that Client First could offer us was that they're actually seeing this in our area quite a bit. There are not that many vendors that currently work in Connecticut. It is a massive project and a massive undertaking to try to integrate all of these modules. And so there just aren't that many vendors that can meet all of our needs. Groton has some very specific and complicated needs. That was noted by Client First. You want this? That was noted by Client First when they came in and did an evaluation for us.
I think there's two things from my perspective, and certainly Brian and Nikki know a lot more about this than I do. I know how to spell IT. Two observations are, well, three. One is Groton is unique in some ways because of our various taxing districts and so forth, but there's merger after merger after merger. So even 5-10 years ago, there were a lot more companies that were in this business, and they've been gobbling each other up. And what I've heard and read and talked to folks about is that's very, very true. There are also companies out there that offer programs or solutions that we couldn't possibly afford. They're overkill. So companies seem to be kind of focusing in on really small applications or really big applications. In kind of the middle-sized communities, there's not a whole lot of those options right now. You know, I don't want to throw out any of the names of some of these, but it's you know, it's clear talking to our consultants that, you know, they have said to us, you don't need that. That's what, you know, we may have it now, and maybe that's part of the problem, is that the decision was made to purchase a predecessor program, and the company's gone in a different direction to want to service New York and Los Angeles, and that's why they're not serving or supporting some of these legacy programs. You have to remember, a lot of these programs we have, they were the first programs that the town purchased. And it's right, they're 20 years old, and they're legacy programs. We've definitely gotten our money's worth out of them, but we're also getting to a point, as Nikki said, we're losing functionality, and we're really putting ourselves at risk that when something breaks, we're going to be back to, you know, taking our socks off and counting our toes to kind of add things up. And that scares me as we are complicated. We may think we're a nice little tiny town, but when you've got 9 fire districts and this and that, and the tax bills, and it is we're a little unique, but I think it's more the industry, what's going on in the industry, Bruce. There's just not a lot of these companies out there that are servicing this size community. There's so many mergers that have happened over the last 5-10 years.
But do you feel confident that we've got the ability to put this thing together and pull it off?
I absolutely
That's what I'm concerned about.
I have a lot more confidence now than I did when we started this program. I started talking about it. I think Client First has really helped us. I think that we will come to learn that is some of the best money that we could have spent. I mean, we did have folks, and some folks maybe in this room or were in the room at the time that were like, just go out and buy something. It's a lot more complicated than that. There are no promises, but I truly do believe we've put in a good investment, and I truly believe if we don't move forward, we're going to lose a lot of that investment. With respect to the thought that we'll wait to the next manager, I did have the privilege of meeting with the candidates, and it just happened to come up in 2 of my discussions with them. And they were both like, please, don't wait for us. We're going to be drinking from a fire hose if offered this job. And, you know, they didn't have any more expertise than I probably did, but it was like, life needs to go on. We can't, the next manager is going to probably not be from Connecticut, probably isn't going to understand. They're going to need time learning the community and dealing with other issues like getting a, you know, $100 million plus school construction program underway. They're not going to have time for this. They're going to be involved. They're going to have an opportunity to be involved, but I certainly would not recommend you use that as an excuse, I hate to say it, to kick the can down the road once again.
Good information. Thank you.
Representative Kent.
Any synergies with the Board of Ed? Payroll, HR, I can think of a number of them, and they were talking about that in a recent meeting. Any way you could work with them and share budget?
The first phase modules that we would be looking at, which are our financials, would definitely involve the Board of Education. Yes, we would be working with them to get on the same system and integrate the systems.
Could you please clarify what you mean by financials specifically?
General ledger, payroll, accounts payable. Thank you. Fixed assets. Purchasing. Thank you.
And so the plan is to share this with the Board of Ed, this new software?
Yes,
the
the plan is to share, is
bring those functions that are currently at the Board of Ed.
exactly, bring that functionality to the Board of Ed.
Okay.
Begs the question, is there Board of Ed money that's already been allocated for this?
Well, what I would say is we still have 2 vendors that have to come in and demonstrate their software. Now, is it 4 days for both 4 days per vendor, or 4 days total for the
4
2?
days for one vendor. We're starting
Okay.
with one vendor first.
Okay.
Board of Ed will be involved in that process if we go forward with it.
Do you think 4 days is enough for the supervisors and managers in the town to get a feel for whether this is going to do what they need? Because obviously the last thing we want to do is pay for this and find out that it just doesn't fit.
That is just the initial demonstration. It's to help us decide whether we want to see the second vendor or whether we're happy with what the first vendor has to offer. And then after that, there will be much more intense training and demonstrations. Actual demonstrations where we can give them scenarios and have them walk through some of our more complicated scenarios. Also, these vendors, like I mentioned, have locations in Connecticut, so we can actually go to other towns that are using the software and have conversations with them. This is all built into the schedule.
What do we do if we find out that they don't meet our needs?
Well, one of the things that we've been doing, again, over the last year is we've done a very detailed feature function review. So at this point, we already know what features that we've asked for that they cannot do. Now it's a matter of exploring with them, do you have any workarounds, and or looking at our business processes to see if there's something we can change. but at least we know what they are going in.
Is there any additional questions? Representative Kent.
Just a point, it looks like there's about $393K for software in the BOE budget. I wondered if any of that could be allocated here and help you get to that 658 number.
I think we would have to go investigate that. The Education Committee has already met and voted, but perhaps on the 18th, when the Board of Ed comes in, we'll ask them.
Yeah, because it was voted on a general software number and not knowing what specific software modules or synergy with the town, although they did mention the synergy with the town. And I think you know, if we need to get there and we can start with some money from the BOE, that would be very helpful.
Representative Dean Shinbrock.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I have a question about the Chronos, because we use that in the Board of Ed, and it says 15 time clocks need to be replaced. Does that include those at the schools and central office, or is that that number of the 15 Chronos clocks doesn't include the schools, does it?
No, that's strictly on the town side.
And when do we expect, because I think we were going to start seeing vendor demonstrations. I know December was an aggressive goal, but we were talking about January, February. Now it's May. Do we have any idea when we make a decision, when would we actually start implementation, number one, and number two, who's going to watch over everybody in the town that's been doing the same thing for 20 years and make sure, train them and make sure that they get on board and change that culture to use the new system?
We've actually been working on that for the last year. We have what's called an IT steering committee, which has brought people from every part of the organization. We meet once a month, talk about upcoming projects, active projects, the ERP, getting ready for it, doing our pre-implementation. So that's changing that culture. It's already happened. And I'm sorry, what was your first question?
Well, the first question is, when would we start implementing it in the town?
I truly do not want to estimate implementation, only because I want to do our due diligence. And so this is a massive project. This is the biggest project that we have taken on. And I haven't done one before like this, so I don't know how long it will take to do all of those demonstrations that we want to do. I think Client First has estimated it can be as short as a month or two. But again, I want everyone to have the comfort level with the software before we implement.
And Client First says that $658,000 is the amount that we would need
For the most critical.
for the first
Yes,
phase.
First phase.
Is there any additional questions before we vote? Representative Aubrey.
This is not a question. This is something Mark could help me with. You know, I was on the RTM when I think we got our first computer, our first, whatever you call that damn thing. And we used to have a guy on the RTM, he used to call us, "You guys." You know who I'm talking about? The wood floor fella. I can't remember his name.
Oh, okay, Mr. Pillar.
Yeah, and he'd say, "You guys are wasting money. And you know they're going to want one of those in every office." So believe me, we have come a long ways, and we need to keep going. Thank you.
I did have a chance to review the RFP that the town put out. How many pages was that?
Couple hundred.
Yeah, it was a few hundred pages. It was a very big undertaking, and it was very impressive. And I've done RFPs in the past. This was very impressive. It's going to be a lot of work to redo this effort. Just something to consider. Is there any discussion before we vote on the first amended figure of $658,000? Representative Casper.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Out of curiosity, who are the two vendors?
I think we'd actually rather not say who the vendors are at this point because we don't want to jeopardize the negotiations or
You said there was, I guess I'm confused if there's only 2 that responded.
there were a total of 3 that responded, 2 were qualified.
I guess let me step in. We'll be glad to tell you one-on-one. What I'm afraid of is if we put names out there and then folks start to talk about them because they may have had some experience and comments pro or con towards them are made, that's the concern. There's no secret. I would be concerned that we would start to go down the path of judging vendors unnecessarily at this point in time.
Representative Wells.
I know we all take, I noticed the town websites mentioned here, which we all take for granted. And I don't know how many people realize that what we know of the World Wide Web is really poorly standardized. There's some antique standards that were very good, but a lot of features were put in are vendor specific. And with this, I noticed a mention of HTML5. I'm not reading up on this, but that brings in a lot of what we expect to see on the web into international standards. So eventually, if you did nothing, parts of the vendor-specific features that are built into the website would start to disappear, and you'd be wondering what happened. I used to subscribe to a mailing list out of Italy that reviewed every new website that long ago. And I've had browsers that had, I think, what was it, Netscape frames. There were different things. The browser companies would produce a feature, and people would write the web pages to suit the browsers. And it looks like this HTML5, as I understand it, without being any really knowledgeable, brings together graphics, video.
Yeah, it's the latest out there right now, yeah.
All that stuff. So our website that we take for granted is it's not going to work so well. Pretty soon you're going to go, what happened?
Well, the town's website was actually written in-house, and we're still supporting that. So the website that we currently use was written in-house. We don't use a content manager.
Yeah.
So, and it's gotten so big that we can't rewrite it. That's why in the future years of the CIP is for a rewrite, complete rewrite of that system, that website.
If I write, I use HTML2.
2?
Easy to understand. It works good, you know.
Is there any other Representative, hang on one second. You've had a couple turns. Is there anybody else that would like to speak who hasn't spoken yet? Representative Kent.
Could you tell us how many staff years you think you've spent so far on RFP requirements development, user sessions, et cetera, and how much of that would be lost and then have to be redone if we delay this a year? In other words, you can associate a cost essentially with momentum, and if it's stopped for a year, you're going to have to redo it. It's probably bigger than that number.
It is definitely hundreds of hours. I have not estimated specifically, but it has involved, I would say, 30 to 40 employees working, 5 to 8 hour days on some of these aspects. The number is very large.
Is there any other discussion before we vote? Seeing none, we'll vote on the first amended figure, $658,000 for account CIP 7B. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes 28-3-0.
Thank you.
That's everything we have for tonight. I'll entertain a motion to recess. Is there a motion to recess?
Second. No, we want to stay here.
Motion to recess has been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?